Nice to see you here. I'm Robbie, and in my previous video, Reading Pictures Out Loud, I showed photos of me and some children when I was giving a guided tour in the birdhouse of Piet Mondrian, which is a nice building that was actually a school located next to a canal in the center of Amersfoort, in the middle of the Netherlands. Piet Mondrian's father was the head of that school, and the family also lived there in that building. When I searched for the photos in my archive for the previous video, I naturally came across all kinds of things, including a video that a Dutch television made about how I was using the abstract works of English artist Douglas Alsop for the children as an introduction into philosophy. In this Bartha video, you can see Douglas talking about how he works and what kind of other works he makes. So the broadcaster wanted me to summarize the entire tour in 2 minutes because that was the name of their program. The recorder was in the room where Piet Mondrian used to live in his early youth, but that room was now empty and had a lot of reverberation. And by the way, it's not because of that reverb that I pronounce his name differently as it is internationally known. The thing is that he had an uncle who was also an artist, but he made very traditional paintings. And when Piet left for Paris, he wanted to start a new life as artist, and to avoid any confusion, he changed his name from Mondrian into Mondrian. He also used that name when he moved to New York, and that's why he's usually called Mondrian internationally. The nice thing is that the Amsterdam Madame Tussauds museums, where he can be seen standing in front of his characteristic work, they also call him Mondrian and not Mondrian. So about the video, well, people always accuse me of being so long of words, which is logical. A tour always lasts for at least 1 hour. But this video proves that I can also be very short of words, summarizing a tour of more than an hour in 2 minutes. When I say that I can do that, no one believes me. Hence the video that the Dutch television made. You can see it at the end of this video. Well, I started this tour with a short introduction about abstract art. Before photography was invented, an important task of artists was to paint what can be seen, but what most people not could see because it was far away from their home. Artists painted beautiful landscapes and drew very strange animals. That was useful because mountains are difficult to bring back home. For the strange animals, well, I guess that's how the zoos were born. Making realistic paintings was a special craft performed by professional artists. But since the invention of photography, there was no longer such a need for that factual representation. A picture could do that in no time, which is true. Indeed, a picture is just a snapshot. And artists increasingly started to wonder whether such a photo really reflects what we experience. A camera records everything, and everything is equally important in the photo, while a painting is actually the selection of what the artist finds important. And now that they no longer had to paint so realistically, the artist's own input became different and very personal. The developments that followed are extremely interesting and extensive. That is why there has already been published a lot about. And no need for me to do so, and I go further with the story about my guiding. So I take some big steps, and you find me with the children in the room where Piet Mondrian spent his first years in life. During the guiding, it was a large empty room where 3 works of art, 1 on each wall, and the 4th wall consisted of windows. The works of art were big, black, shiny plates. One work with large holes one with very small holes, and the third work we see that the holes are something between in size. Alsop had told me that the artworks are simply based on what he saw in his youth. His parental home was at the corner, and when he lay in bed at night he saw how the lights of the headlights on the wall when the cars turned into the street. The dark wall had suddenly dancing white spots. During the installation of Alsop's works in that room, I realized that Piet Mondrian might have seen something similar when he lay on the floor. From that floor, looking up outside, he saw the white spot of the moon shining between the moving trees, just as we can see in some of his early works. It's a beautiful story, but it's even more beautiful to let the children lie on the floor and experience it themselves. First, they lay with their faces to the wall so they can imagine that it's night, and then they could turn around to look outside, up outside, just like the young Mondrian might have done. And they really loved that, to do that. Now that they knew the story behind the holes in the plates, it was time to take a closer look at those artworks. First one with the large holes. The white wall that can be seen through the holes in the black artwork indeed resembles the white spots of the headlights at night. This in contrast with the big black plates. You don't need much imagination to see that. Then we went to the artwork with very small spots. That one almost looked like a mirror. And it's a very strange effect, because in a museum you usually only see the backs of other visitors when they are looking at a work of art. But because of the mirror effect, you now look into each other's faces, and that's always awkward. So next we moved to the artwork with a medium-sized hole, and suddenly it's unclear. Is the other visitor looking at the holes or at you? If the other person looks at the holes, while they could also look at you, it feels as if you don't exist for the other person. It is usually an unclear feeling when somebody looks in your direction but doesn't see you. Well, sometimes it's fortunate because you don't want to be seen, but most of the time you do want to be seen. If they don't see you by accident, yeah, well, you can laugh at it later. But if the other person clearly doesn't want to see you, it feels like you don't exist for that person. And that's not pleasant, especially if there are more people and the others also completely ignore you and do not notice you. And that is exactly what the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre stated. We exist because the others see us. The picture that you see now is from the book about Jean-Paul Sartre, written by Annie Cohen-Solal. I saw her on the Dutch television when she was interviewed. Those days I still had a bookshop, and the day after that interview I sold many more of her books than we had in the shop. So she was not ignored, the opposite. However, there's almost nothing worse than being completely ignored, because then you start to think that you do not exist. But according to the other French philosopher René Descartes, the fact that you think is the proof that you exist. Cogito ergo sum. So, concluding, you think you exist because you think that you don't exist. Yeah, we can go any direction with philosophy, and children love that. Some of them reacted very smart. What if the other person doesn't see me, but I see myself reflected in the work of art? Doesn't that count? Because there is someone looking at me. Yeah, at that moment the door opens and other visitors looked into the room, and they saw that there were 3 black plates with holes in them hanging on the wall. You could see them thinking, this must be modern art, isn't it? And immediately they were gone. When the door was closed, the children loved at the facial expression of those adults. One knows that art only exist when you look at it. After which the other added, yeah, but you have to take time to really look at it. So children can be so smart and to the point. I always learn from them. Later, when Douglas Alsop saw the photos of the guiding, he said he regretted not being there. Well, in my coming videos, I will speak again, but for longer, and this time about a number of standard activities that we have in the Danang Art for Children Gallery. Thanks for watching and see you next time. And for the diehards, they can listen to the whole story again in 2 minutes. See you.
Tot ze in de 19e eeuw de fotografie uitvonden, was een heel belangrijke taak van de kunstenaars om te laten zien hoe landschappen in andere landen uitzagen. Wanneer ze in Indonesië waren geweest, dan konden ze daar een schilderij maken van vulkanen en al die mooie bomen. En wanneer ze bijvoorbeeld in Afrika zo'n heel lang beest met een lange nek tegenkwamen, dan brachten ze die gewoon mee. En zo zijn de diepen en het museum ontstaan. Maar toen in de mondeling geboren werd en de fotografie steeds beter werd, toen begrepen de kunstenaars dat het gewoon naschilderen van de natuur zijn beste tijd had gehad. En ze gingen op een heel andere manier schilderen. Soms gingen ze de natuur helemaal verkleuren of zo. En soms gingen ze bijvoorbeeld schilderen iets zoals het was en niet zoals het eruit zag. Zoals Johannes Itten, die liet eerst citroenen schilderen, dan gaf ze allemaal een halve citroen in een bek en liet die schilderen hoe dat die citroen proefde. Mondriaan was weer een heel ander iemand die in plaats van dat die van alles ging naschilderen, zei ik heb hier een schilderij en dan ga ik in dat vlak zoeken naar hoe ik lijnen en vlakken in evenwicht kan brengen. En deze kunstenaar Douglas Alsop, die nu in het Mondriaanhuis hangt, die gaat weer op een heel andere manier te werken met zijn kunstwerken. En het grappige is dat als je dit werk ziet, dan weet je meteen wat Sartre allemaal bedoelde. Want je kunt in dit werk de weerspiegelingen zien en je kunt ook naar de gaten kijken. En wanneer ik van hieruit naar de gaten kijk en er staat daar iemand en die zit daar ook naar diezelfde gaten te kijken, dan kan het zijn dat de kinees zien dat hij naar mij kijkt en niet naar die gaten. En dat is precies wat Sartre bedoelde met dat je bestaat dankzij de blik van een ander, maar als je merkt dat iemand naar jou staat te kijken in dat kunstwerk, dan is het een hele vreemde gewaarwording. Nou, op zo'n manier kunnen kunstenaars met hun werk omgaan. En soms gaat het goed en soms gaat het wat minder goed, maar dat is niet erg. Met een goede hulplijnen gaat het altijd goed.